is on the fourth week, right? Fourth week. Wow, time's flying. And the next week we're our finale week, and we have Douglas Davis coming in, joining us. So, but we once again have another fabulous speaker in here, someone who's once again very familiar with our program, thanks to Nick. Nick's got a lot of great contact for bringing in high profile people from all over the world, basically. And so Bob's familiar with our program, and we really are delighted that he's joining us and spending some time with us here as well. So encourage, so we have one more speaker session coming up on next week. Please encourage to sign up, register, and share with your other friends and family members. They want to learn about topography. It's been a really great session. What I particularly have been really enjoying these sessions are, that looking at the work is great, you know what I mean? And you really get inspired by that. But you know what, for me, maybe I'm older, just listening to Peter talk, Greg talk, you know what I mean? And Tony talk, Ellen talk, it's just been a really kind of maybe a past journey, I'm reminiscing about what was like. And there were certain things that when I was growing up and learning about topography and design that I still miss quite a bit, that the tactile, the collaborative, that working together side by side and late at night and making mistakes and redoing all those things. There's no more Command Z's, we didn't have that. So but anyway, I'm delighted to see a lot of you joining us again. And without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and ask Josh to make a formal introduction to our speaker, Bob Ewing. So let's give Josh a big round of applause. He's been great doing all this too.
Thank you, Dave. So Bob Ewing is an independent brand designer and hand letterer from Indiana, Indiana. 3.5 years into his architecture degree at Ball State University, Bob switched to communication design, and rest has been history. Since then, he has worked in many positions, from a junior designer to an art director. Today, he's a freelance designer whose interest lies in empowering young designers through his nonprofit, Inch by Inch. Thank you, Bob, and the floor is yours.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. Yeah, it's been great. I unfortunately, it's like 8 o'clock here. So timing wise, I haven't been able to tune in to the 3 previous sessions, but I got to go back earlier this week and watch them all. So just awesome. Peter, Greg, and then getting to see Tony. I mean, like you said, David, just get to hear some of the conversations and some of the stories. And I'm always, as designers and creatives, I think we're always interested in other people's processes and other people's stories. And it's just always a good to see, how people ended up where they are, and just to see their work. I was not familiar. I'm very familiar with Tony's work. I'm not ashamed to admit that, Peter, I didn't know your work or yours either, Greg. And so that's always, I feel like every day or every week, I'm always finding somebody new that I didn't know before, and just kind of amazed by their work. So yeah, I appreciate everyone coming out tonight or tuning in on a Friday. I think when I originally signed up for this, I thought it was at 5, which it is, but 5 o'clock your time and 8 o'clock my time. So yeah, so tonight, this is, if you've heard me speak before, if you've been one of Nick's students, I don't know if I've given this talk to your class, Nick. I know we've done the workshop a couple times. I don't know if I've actually given this talk, but if you have heard me speak, it's always a kind of evolution of a talk, because I really only know how to talk about my story and my experiences. I'm not really one to just give blanket advice, or because I don't that's just not my personality. And I feel unless the goal is always hopefully maybe you can just kind of glean something from kind of the mistakes that I made in my past. And I mean, I'm honored to be here because lettering is a huge part of my story, especially as a creative journey. And I think when I discovered hand lettering, that was really about the time I really started discovering myself and what this okay, this is what I was born to do. Because before that, there was a little bit of time between architecture school and design school. And I kind of meandered and wandered a bit, and I didn't really know what I was gonna do. And it really wasn't until I met my wife and moved back to Indiana from Florida, where I was born and raised, where I kind of okay, I got to figure out something to do. And at some point, design was a realization for me. So we didn't have graphic design in high school. that wasn't something, I didn't know what graphic design was. I didn't know what commercial art was. I actually got accepted into commercial art school and architecture school, but I was fortunate enough to know that I always wanted to be an architect for most of my high school career. It just took me 3.5 years of college to realize that I didn't want to be an architect. So anyway, let's get into this. And I think it's like 30 minutes, but I've pared it down a little bit for this. So I think we'll have plenty of time for Q&A. And I really think that's the part I enjoy the most, not just listening to myself talk. So at any point, if you have a question, feel free to like shout it out or raise your hand, however this works. Very casual. So I have a glass of bourbon and we'll get this thing started. So let me. Everybody see that?
Yes.
Perfect. When Josh and David first reached out to me about this, I like honored, obviously, and I think pretty like I discovered Tony's work around the time I studied. I kind of fell into hand lettering, and I'll talk about that a little bit. I'm a huge Herb Lubalin fan, and I kind of he was one of the people that I like latched onto early on in my design career, and just really appreciated what he did with letters and logos. And you could just tell there's like a handcrafted feel to it, that it wasn't, it was never something just out of the box. There was lots of thought that went into that. And that's something that I've always tried to imitate, is this idea that like, when you look at something, you can tell that like someone put some thought and time, and that that it was made with my hands. I'm a very analog person. I have an iPad. My son pretty much just took it over because I just can't. I can't learn to draw. I just don't enjoy drawing on it, and I enjoy the lead pointers and pencil and paper and trace paper so much. I just enjoy the experience of drawing that I can't get to the digital side of that. And I think at some point that could be a fault. There's oftentimes I could work faster, but I mean, and honestly, if we're doing this and we're not enjoying it, then what's really the point? So you guys know this, imported from Brooklyn. This is, like I said, a little bit of my story. We'll kind of rip through this. And the goal is to have some good conversation and answer some questions after this. This is actually a typeface that I'm working on with a good friend, Mark Nesso. If you don't know him, you should look him up. He's an incredible letterer and illustrator. But yeah, just something fun that we're just kind of testing. So my name is Bob Ewing, as kind of Josh mentioned. I'm a 40-year-old graphic designer. I spent 10 plus years in advertising and design, everything from production artists. I kind of started at the bottom and worked my way up, went the art director route, and then realized that most of the positions I was in were a working art director, so you're still doing the work, but just kind of realized that I really enjoy the work. So at some point I decided I didn't want to be art director, and I was just a designer, and they're all titles. It doesn't necessarily mean much. In the grand scheme of things, it just comes with more responsibilities and hopefully more pay. That's kind of the goal as you kind of elevate your career. But at some point I realized that I'm a senior designer. That's where I ended up before I left to work for myself. So yeah, I tell a lot of people I'm unemployed, which isn't totally accurate because I'm self-employed, which is very glamorous. This is my office when I started. I've been working for myself since October of 2019. And in all honesty, that was a day that I was working for probably about a year. I mean, for lots of years, but some point early in 2019, my wife and I had the conversation and decided that it was, later this year was the time that I was gonna, start working for myself. It was always a goal to be around the kids more, to be home, and just do the work that I wanted to do, curate my own life, make the decisions and do the stuff I want to do. Because we have that ability. to do that. So it started off, this is like my kids, when like in the heart of COVID, like this is where they would do their e-learning. So this was 6 months prior to that when I left to do my own thing. So this is me like just churning away, you know, working real hard. The form, the back, you could, those days would hurt. But for some reason, I just enjoy it. Like I liked sitting at this desk, which is just weird. You can even see like there's some work. I would like paste stuff to the windows in the back. I'm a big fan of like, we do so much work on the computer that you got it like printed out so that you can actually see it. And I would leave it, you know, sometimes it stays up for days as you kind of like walk by it and, you know, look at it with, you know, a new set of eyes. Since then, we're in the office that I'm in now, which was kind of the goal, was build, you know, like I said, curate the work I want to do, but also curate a space for me that I can, you know, feel inspired in and comfortable in, and you know, want to, you know, make the long journey down the flight of stairs from my bedroom to my office every day. So there's lots of, and like, this is all stuff I was excited to like get out of. Like it was all, you know, as a designer, I like to collect things and I like to be surrounded by stuff that inspires me, like I said. And this was stuff that was kind of like stuffed away in the basement because I only had like so much room on my desk at work previously. So it was great to like get this stuff out and all these books out. And we have these like 2 big shelves. You can see like the right here. I only had enough books to fill 1 shelf. So I just told my wife, like, I need to buy a lot more books. And that's my dog, Maddie. She's right here too. Like every day she hangs out with me. So it's just not me by myself. She's always here hanging out. So like Josh mentioned, I consider myself an independent brand designer, independent because I work by myself. And I've just kind of settled in that like I really enjoy helping people with brand work. I enjoy creating new brands, and I enjoy redoing brands, you know, brand updates. And I think brand for me, like I said, I consider myself like a classically trained graphic designer, where I can kind of do a jack of all trades. I feel like I can do a lot of things well enough. And I think brand is a place where I can live in and I can do all those things. Like, I mean, I got to do like a log mascot for a park, like in like the town, like just north of us. Like they had this competition and they settled on this like Lincoln the Log as their mascot for their parks program. But it was like submitted by like a, you know, like a 4 or 5-year-old, which was super cool. But the original drawing was like crappy. Like, I mean, creepy in the way that like you can't reproduce that. And it was a little creepy too. So they hired me to like, you know, to kind of bring it to life and make it like an actual mascot. So like get to do stuff like that. And then actual like brand, like creating brands from scratch, which is always enjoyable. And this is kind of, I feel like this is a good mix of like, if the brand calls for some like script or brush lettering, then like, let's do that. But a lot of these are also custom letters too. I try not to just type something out. I'm always trying to, like I said, I want it to feel handcrafted. So even though some of these may be based off a handful of fonts, they are, none of these are stock, you know, fonts, except for like the rosewood stuff is pretty, some of that is also dependent on budget, sometimes how much time and stuff you can put on it. But for the most part, everything is, you know, we're never just typing anything out and calling it a day. So like I said, Indianapolis is where I was. I've lived here my entire life outside of a short stint in Florida. And that has like, I think growing up in the Midwest and hasn't, you know, it's kind of made me who I am today. Everyone knows that like where you're raised and how you're raised has an effect on you. And as a parent, that's something I have to remind myself all the time as, you know, trying to raise 2 kids. So this is just some like a Midwest tee that I designed to kind of celebrate the Midwest. And I think the purpose of this is to like, not just show work. That's not kind of like what I'm here for, but to like show that like this has like a personality and a feel to it. So like when I design this, when you're designing custom letters, it can have the characteristics can give it like a personality, or like this shirt feels very Midwest. If you think like it's hardworking, it's bold, it can be a little bit, you know, rounder and closer together. You hear that echo? Okay, I think we're good. A pennant for Indianapolis, just trying to do like something vintage, and then trying to work within a new container, like a pennant. What you can't really see is that like the cap and baseline kind of in on each other. Like the L at the end of the word isn't the same height as, you know, the D and the I in the beginning. This is also super important to me. This guy, like, I think you guys know Josh Ariza. If you're not familiar with Josh Ariza, I know Nick does. He's an illustrator and he's a brand designer as well in Costa Mesa, California. But he has a brand called Chomp. And he did these like Jesus, it's like surfing and hanging 10. And like, this is important to me. So I always like to mention it. Not Josh Ariza, he is important to me. He's a friend, but like Jesus is a big part of my life and who I am. So it's just some more lettering. This is a piece I did, lives on our wall, like in my wife and I's bedroom, and just kind of a reminder of like love never fails. So it's like a constant thing that you see every day. And then this like another like important message that I think comes from that part of me is this idea like of loving one another, and how having empathy and just how important that is. You know, we all have our own issues. We're all going through our own things, but we're also all in this together. So maybe just cut someone a break because we don't know what they've been going through, or have a conversation with them and ask them what they're going through, because we're really all here to be in relationship with other people. No one wants to be alone or by themselves. So this is my family. This picture is a couple years old. It's from 2019. We had to go to Scotland with some friends. So my wife, Stephanie, and my daughter, Arden, who's 10, and my son, Nixon, who's 7. And they're obviously, that's part of the reason why I ended up, or why I am where I am today, is so I can spend more time with them. I get to pick them up from school each day, and they inspire me every day. They also frustrate me every day, but that's just being a parent. So, but because of that, get to do, you know, because I have a family, like these are all personal projects. These aren't, none of these are paid. So that's another thing. Like sometimes I just draw stuff and make stuff because it makes someone else smile, or make someone else happy, or like I feel the need to do it. Everything doesn't have to be paid work. In fact, I think you can learn a lot from personal projects. They're very important, like super important. I think everyone should have something that they're doing because they enjoy it, and not just because it's a paid. So Mother's Day project, threw some vectors in there because if you've seen me talk before or taken a workshop, like as much as I enjoy drawing letters, I also enjoy the vector side of it. And like, I guess that's maybe the architecture or the like mathematician, you know, the math side of me, the science side. But so this is a first invite we made for my daughter. They were like, you know, spent a couple of weeks like sanding these blocks, stamps made, painting them, and then we hand delivered all these just for fun. This is my son's first invite was a first birthday invite was an Evite, I think. We didn't have, you know, at that time didn't have the same desire to do that, but we did make these like 2-color custom letterpress birth announcements with some custom lettering in the middle. And then like we got to go down to Florida to Mama Sauce, and Nixon got to press check them, which was awesome experience. He's really testing out the French paper, making sure it's, you know, going to hold up. And so then another personal project that has to do with lettering. I kind of landed on this, like at the time I was drawing so much in my notebook. I use a lot of these like field notes. I love these like small, still use these every day, these small notebooks because they fill up easy. Yeah, I just really like the size of them, and I really like the story behind them. But at the time I was trying to work much bigger. So I came up with this idea of doing these like growth charts in like a butcher menu style, like sign painter style. So these are all like big rolls of seamless paper, and I would like measure him, you know, and then I'd be like, okay, this is how tall the lettering needs to be. I'd come up with something like beefcake, age 3 months. This is stud muffin for 6 months. that's just dumb. Like the fact that he's flexing, looks like he's flexing, is just dumb luck. Like that's what happens when you take 200 of a 6-month-old and they just kind of like squirm around. But like it just, when I saw that, I was like, I just started like laughing because I couldn't believe, like, he's smiling and like it's all in, it's all clear and in frame, and he's like, looks like he's flexing. But we did ham bone for 9 months, and this is my daughter. This, like, over here on the side, that's my daughter at the time, so she would have been 3 and almost 3, and she wants to, when I roll out a big paper and there's markers and stuff, she also wants to get involved. So like that's the rainbow that she made while I was working on the letters. So we did pork chop for a year, beef jerky, sweet and spicy. This is when he gets 2 years old, and he's like, you start to see some of the like personality and the like attitude come out sometimes. And he's mad here. He was not happy with us. And then we did 3. This is a turd sandwich, made fresh daily. So as the project kind of evolved, I did it every year, and then I tried to, like, if I had time, I would do, try and make it a little more, like put a little bit more into it. So you can have like a little like turd mascot with its hands up. He was pretty good. Like his 3s were golden. He was great. Meathead, 4 pounds, $4 per pound. And then like a little steak mascot. This was the last year we did it because it was probably the worst year. And then I just outgrew it. And I'll kind of talk about that in a little bit with personal projects. My daughter always says, like, why did you not do this for me? And I'm like, well, I didn't have that idea when you were a baby. So we did have a big chalkboard wall. It's behind this like shiplap that's on the walls right now. Turns out, like, I hate chalk as a medium. It reminds me of an old, I used to work for a concrete company, and it reminds me of like the texture of cement. And I just don't enjoy it. So I think like 8 or 9, one of them still on the wall. Like I just left it up. So it usually was just get left up all year round because I just didn't enjoy it. So this is just thrown in here for fun. Parental advisory. The next slide is a reenactment of my kid's birth. This is a lesson on, as designers. I mean, I remember one. This is a perfect example. I was like, I wasn't having a very good day, and my wife had taken the kids to this like fall festival or like pumpkin patch or something like that, and they had this like bounce house there. And what you can't hear in the background is like my wife and like one of her friends like laughing hysterically as like my daughter squirts out of this thing and then goes back to like pull it open to help my son get out. So this is a lesson in like, not everything that's designed is good. And the fact that someone designed this and then someone approved it and then they paid for it to get made and no one thought, maybe we shouldn't make this like this, is this, it's a miracle. So anyway, it makes for a good laugh. Like Josh said, we're getting to the heart of it. I also run a nonprofit called Inch by Inch. We're a 501c3. We make 1-inch buttons. Designers from all over the world have designed buttons for us, and we used to send those out to our members. We had, it was a monthly club, and then we realized that like 36 buttons a month was a lot of buttons for a year, and no one knows what to do with that many buttons. So then it changed to quarterly, and now we make other stuff. But I started this with my good friend Drew, who I met in art school in high school. We've worked together at a couple of different agencies, and we just wanted to work on something together. And then also trying to combat the fact that like in public schools, art is getting stripped out of school because of budget cuts. And art was so important to us in our degree, obviously as designers, but art is also important to even people that think they're not artists. There's so many like stats and stuff around people and like they get better grades and they're like more well-rounded, and all this all the way from like grade school all the way up to high school about like kids that have art class. So these 3 ladies were our art teachers from middle school and high school. It's fun when you have your own brand because we call this like industrial schoolhouse design. Both of us, Drew and I, both have like a 50s 40s like aesthetic that we appreciate, like mid-century. So we want to try and bring some of that into what we do. And when you have your own brand, you can have 6 logos because it's yours. You can do whatever you want. My favorite is this like this prime X prime that's in the bottom right, like that's our abbreviated logo, because it still like says inch by inch. And this is just kind of look at like all the things that you can go on our website at xinch.org and purchase, and then we'll turn around and we'll donate those proceeds to a couple of youth art programs. So I didn't mention that. It's all in the name of youth art education. And like, we don't take any money from this. It's just a passion project of ours. So some of this we get to make, some of this other people have made for this graciously. Good times. But why we're really here is letters. And like I said before, like lettering is a huge part of my identity as a designer, I feel like, and it really played a huge role into me figuring out who I am and what I wanted to be. And that all kind of started with Ken Barber. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with Ken Barber. He is, you should be. I mean, not only is he like one of the best human beings ever, but he's, as far as contemporary hand letterers, I think he's probably one of the best modern day letterers of our time. Like, he works at House Industries, which is, everyone should be, if you're a designer, you should be familiar with House Industries. But he is also a fantastic teacher, and he teaches at Cooper Type. Now most of those classes are online too, so I highly suggest if you should take a class from him. But early on, this is how I figured out what lettering was at the time via Instagram. This would have been 2014. Everyone was just sharing like crappy photos of like themselves or food, and not really like work. But Ken was showing these like cruddy. These are all, like, say cruddy. His sketches are immaculate, and that like strive to be able to draw as crisp and clean as he does with a pencil. But at the time, he was sharing like this process and stuff like that with letters, and no one else was doing that. And like Skillshare wasn't around, and you couldn't go on YouTube and figure out how to hand letter. Like, it just wasn't. There wasn't a lot about it unless you knew someone or unless you were taking a class at a college or something like that. For me, I found that there wasn't a lot of this to go. So this was my introduction into lettering, and this is how I figured out that, like, okay, all this stuff is hand drawn. Like, I used to take fonts and try and like manipulate them via Illustrator into something or Photoshop, and it never worked, and I was never pleased with it. And then I figured out that, like, oh, someone's drawing these by hand. Like, it makes sense. Why wouldn't they be? So also at the same time, French Paper and CSA, Charles S. Anderson. This was another part of like, this all influences like my design aesthetic. I love French Paper. Love the family, the Frenches, they're amazing. And then Charles S. Anderson was just doing things design-wise that people weren't doing, and it had this kind of like made feel to it, and this like vintage feel that like I appreciated as a Midwesterner that grew up like seeing this international logo. Like, my dad was a farmer, so like at the time it all like as you get older it all kinds of clicks and makes sense. But at the time, like, I saw all this stuff as a kid, and I always like I didn't really appreciate it, but I grew up around it, and now I appreciate like so much of this historic design. And I think you're probably thinking like, what, how does this make any sense? But like, this whole thing is about inspiration, and I know it's about like Tony's work, and how he's inspired another generation or other people his same generation. And me, these are like, this is the stuff that inspired me, and there is a handcrafted nature to this. And it made in the same, a lot of stuff was made in the same era of what the work that he was doing. And the fact that people could make such incredible designs that hold up 50 years later, like some of these are like printed on a cruddy little package and it still looks amazing. And they had like, a 100th of the power or the tools that we currently have today. But what they did have that we have too is our own hands and our own brains. And they were making this, it was all handmade. It all came from sketches and stuff like that. And I listened to, the earlier talks about, just how we forget how easy it is to make something today. Like, we can just get on a computer and an iPad and make it. But there is this quality to it that it just comes through when it has this handmade touch. And for me, that all starts with, like I said, with a sketch pad. Like everything is in these pages, and like it all starts out as a cruddy sketch, and then then I take a picture on my phone and it goes, you know, it becomes digital because that's at most time what we need, but it all starts handcrafted. And then, yeah, so Herb, like I said, I'm pretty sure I did a type poster of him when I was in college, or like a designer poster. I can't remember, you know, one of those projects that like every college does. But that's when I first discovered his work, which led me to, you know, everyone that essentially worked with Herb and around Herb. So this is just kind of a snapshot of like the last 3 years of stuff. I do enjoy like big chunky script letters, and you'll see a lot of those, but I also like, I don't try and put my influence on something. Like a lot of times the characteristics of the company that I'm, especially when it comes to branding, characteristics of what that company is and what they represent is what I'm trying to bring out in their work. I'm not big on the really flourished kind of Spencerian letters. Like it's something I feel like I can do. It's not natural to me. Like the big piece in the middle is about the most I've done of that, but I have like such appreciation for that and how you can take words and put them together, and then with the swatches, and it just feels like a really solid piece. Like everything is balanced, and I love that. I've always been a big fan of that. So real quick, we're almost there. Lettering for me started in 2014. Like I said, I discovered Ken Barber's work. At the time I was working for an agency and I was doing a bunch of like display ads and stuff like that. And I was just a production designer. I'd been there probably about a year, and I didn't really know, like trying to find my identity, like, and you can't like, or what I enjoy doing. And at some point I figured out that like all these people that are drawing letters, they essentially just started like they're drawing them by hand. And I was like, okay, so I don't know what day this is. September 14th, September something, 2014 was the day I started this. So I lettered the word start. I drew it with pencil in my notebook, and then I inked over it, and I posted it to Instagram. And I decided that day that I was going to draw a word or phrase every day until I got better. A week in, it led to this, which was like me being very inexperienced and not very proficient with a brush pen, but like just trying stuff, like buying, like using pencils and pens, but then also like, okay, I'll get a couple calligraphy pens and some brush pens, and like just trying new things. So this is kind of like a look at like the first couple weeks, like a snapshot of that, of like me just kind of like grasping at anything, not really having any direction, but just there was no, as a personal project, sometimes you just need to set attainable goals, and that's what I did. My goal was to letter something every day and post it to Instagram so that I could get better at drawing letters. That's it. Some of these were just like me, like I said, me being very bad with a brush pen. But for the day, that was okay. But it started to get better. This was 200 days in, about 225 days in. Lots of like, this was like, I did, these were each from a person's talk from the first year I went to Creative South. So starting to get like more proficient, also starting, my hand-to-eye coordination got better. Like I'm learning, like when you draw every day, like you're just getting better at drawing. It's just a natural, which makes sense. How you become a better letter, you have to be better at drawing. Eventually I did this piece for a pro bono project. It wasn't right for the actual project, but I enjoyed it, like the lockup of it. And I felt like it was something that I could like just continue on. And I also liked the message of it. So this is like me, this is before I learned about tracing paper. So this is like copy paper that like I would hold up to the window and draw over it. And then started sharing, more process, just trying to give people a look at what I was doing. Then I started to share, like, this is the vector side of it. And you're like, that's great. But what happened was, by sharing this, it led to the very first job that I ever got. Someone called me, Matthew Flick, from, at the time, it was the School of Advertising Art in Kettering, Ohio. Now it's called the Modern. he hired me to do the very first lettering like commission, and it was all because he had seen the previous job. And this is the first time. Nice. That's my dog. So this was. Sorry about that. So this is me like working and just sharing like images, but also trying to share more process. They turned it into all of this, which was cool. Sorry, hold on 1 second. Sorry about that. They turned it into basically a project to go into high schools and teach people about their school, and that it's graphic design. And this is a project I get behind, because if someone just maybe would have came into my school and taught me what graphic design was, then maybe I wouldn't have wandered so many years before I figured out that this was my calling. But all that happened 365 days later. I decided to letter the word start again, but put a little message behind it, with the start today. And just with an idea of like, if I wouldn't have started 365 days later, that I wouldn't have been to this point. And granted, that's still not like a great piece of lettering, but compared to where I was a year earlier, I made huge strides. And I started to understand what makes a good piece of lettering, or like, why does the O have to look like a O? I learned a lot about just composition and stuff like that. So real quick, sorry, that's a little loud. Real quick, this is just like this kind of rips through all 365 days. And what's cool is like, this became like a visual timeline for that year. When you do something every day, especially something creative or visual like this, you can't help but put in, it can't help but reflect what's going on in your life at that time. So some of these were bad, or some days I didn't feel like doing it. I would go, work all day, come home, be with my daughter at the time, and then go to bed. She would go to bed, and then I'd be like, okay, I have to do this. Sometimes I would sit for like 45 minutes and try and come up with a word, which didn't make any sense, because it didn't matter what the word was. The only thing that mattered was that I was lettering every day, or that I was drawing letters, or doing something with letters. That was the only goal that I'd set out for myself. But as I got deeper into it, more and more pressure on myself to do something that that people wanted to see, because I was sharing this on social media, like that became like a something else that I had to deal with, that didn't matter to the program, or to the project. The only reason I put it on Instagram in the first place was to just hold myself accountable. And I thought maybe like my mom and like my aunt and grandma would like to see it. Maybe they might understand what I do for a living, because it's often, now with social media, they definitely can see what I do. But there was a time where like my dad had no idea like exactly what I did for a living. But when we were like potty training my daughter, that's when we found out my son was a son. We're almost there. We're at the last few minutes. So when I learned that like microns will explode when you fly on a plane, they can't handle the pressure. You'll see like some of these have like big blobs of ink on them. So right there, you can see those are when I was traveling for work. So 365 days in, I wasn't really done. In fact, my good friend Winston, which is like, he posted this comment about like this, which I just thought was funny when I went back and like was looking at all this, because the goal wasn't to just do it for, it wasn't a 365 projects. The goal was to do it every day, to get better. Now, at times you're starting to like, as you get further and further into a project, you have to like reflect on it and realize like, am I still getting what I'm putting in? Am I still getting out of it what I'm putting in? I kind of realized 379 days in that like I didn't need to ink everything, that I was just wasting time coloring and wasting ink. I was pretty good at coloring. Like I remember like passing that in grade school, but I had no idea. Like I just spent a year plus like like literally drawing with pencil and then inking over the top of it for some reason. And it didn't occur to me until this day that I didn't need to ink it. It was just wasting time. At that time, my son was born and I was becoming busier with freelance work. And this is when like my wife and I had many conversations about, while it didn't affect my time with like my kids, like after they went to bed, it affected our time together. Like I said, some nights I would put too much stress on myself to come up with like the right thing to let her. And I was spending way too much time on it. So after many conversations and then coming to the realization that the thing needed to end, and I'd gotten everything out of this daily project. So I did a series of posts, 532 days. I did the work done, 533 days, the end. And this was like a way of me kind of coming to terms with the fact that it was ending, because it was, at this point, it had been a big part of my life. And like, it was I somewhat became addicted to it. Like it was something I had to do. And this all strived from me kind of wasting those years. I say wasting in a loose way, of wasting years of my professional career in architecture school and meandering, because by the time I got out of design school, I felt like I was behind and I had so much to catch up on. So this was like a perfect way. It was the perfect way for me to kind of catch up. But in the end, like at what sacrifice? Because there definitely were some sacrifices I made. And then this was it, 534 next. And I remember the very next day, this like relief like coming over me that I didn't have to do it. And I knew like that I made, I'd made the right decision. So outside of those kind of things that were turn lights on, dark here. There's like a few lessons that I think are important from this. And it's really just start is the key word, but start where you are. It sounds so simple, but it's true. Like you can only start where you are. You can't start where someone else is in your career. Like I saw like Peter's work and some of the stuff he was doing, and like, I can't start where he is in his career. It's impossible. I don't have the same experiences that he has. So I can only start where I am. And I can't worry about where other people are in their careers. Use what you have. When I first started, like I had a pencil. I didn't even have this pencil. I didn't learn about these till like, a few years into lettering, the lead pointers, but just use what you have. Like I had an iPhone 5 and a sketchbook, and I would do it and I would take a picture of it and share it. Like you don't have to have the right tools, because technically the right tools are the ones that you have in front of you, because you can make anything work. And then do what you can. Creativity is like it's an infinite resource. And I did learn like the more you put into it, the more it gives back to you. And like there's only two things in life that we can control, and that's our effort and our attitude. And I think like that's kind of the big thing, and that's kind of where I am in my life now. And those are two things that I'm like focusing on. So that's it. I appreciate it. They went a little bit longer than I thought. Here's some sample Q&A questions. If you can't think of your own, I'll be glad to answer any of these. But, and this font, I forgot to put it on there. This is Decoy, also by Mark Canesso. It's one of my favorite fonts recently, that especially one that he has done. I love the characters of it. It's fantastic. So
that ampersand alone can be a logo.
It's like I said, I think I always tell Mark that he's like he's either part robot. Well, he's not part robot. I think he's an alien.
Alien.
In all honesty, and I tell him that all the time. And that, like, I'm the president of the Mark Canesso fan club.
Wow,
but he's good people, and he does incredible work. So
it's well, what a story, man. What a journey, man. It's you know, when I'm sitting there listening to all this, looking at it, you know, I'm sure a lot of our students feel the same way, that your work is just so relatable. You know what I mean? It just, you know what I mean? It was just like, we could just, you know, I mean, I don't know, it's just inspiring to kind of, you could do this, you know what I mean? And you're telling us this is what you could do, you know what I mean? This is how I did it, you know. And I think I'm good to hear from students that it's so very relatable. You know, your work, you know, we've been up since Nick's introduced you to us, and you know, we've been following your work, and there's some funness about your work, you know, some genuine quality, you know what I mean? There's just something that kind of wholesome, that has this kind of embracing kind of an effect, you know, and
positivity, right?
Yeah. You just, you know, I think you said it right. You're this kind of a fat lettering, you know what I mean? That kind of heavy accent.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's something about it. They just kind of want to hug and kind of feel good about it.
Well, no, I mean, I appreciate that, because, and I think that, like I said, when I'm doing stuff for me, that's completely different. But when you're doing something for a client, that's you're more, you know, you have to stay in their guardrails. But I do think no matter what, as creatives, we're putting our own experiences and our personal spin on that. While maybe it's not like a distinct style, like our experiences are coming through in that. And I do think that, like, growing up in the Midwest, that's, I mean, obviously anywhere you grow up is going to have a huge impact on you. But I do think some of the qualities you're mentioning is like some of the things I enjoy about the people in the Midwest. So thank you. I appreciate those kind words.
Oh, yeah, it really did. It really came across really genuine. You know, the whole story that you know, they had weaving into family and friends and where you are, and the production of your work, it all kind of fits in together. You know, so really appreciate that. You know, I want to let other students ask questions, but I know you had some funny questions. That was great, man. By the way, Josh, you want a little ways on asking questions, or open it up for others to ask questions? Because I've got a bunch of questions too, but.
Yeah, I actually personally have one right now. So I recently started hand lettering because of this exhibit, from like the amount of like guest speakers we've had. And I was just wondering, because I've started doing it on like kind of a digital space on my iPad. And I was just wondering if there's like any cons to starting it there rather than doing it from like pen and pencil.
Yeah, and I think, like, I touched on that a little bit on like why I don't like the iPad. For me, it's just a personal decision. But I do think as a tool, it's an incredible and powerful tool. But I do think that it will make decisions for you. Like, it's designed to like smooth curves out and stuff like that. So it's the computer or the iPad is making those decisions for you. You're not actually drawing them. So I think sometimes there's a false like security in it, or like I can draw like a perfect circle on an iPad, but it takes me a little longer to, you know, do that by hand. So like personally, I would say like don't be quick to jump to a tool like that I think there's a lot of power in using pen and paper. And like undoubtedly, like there's something about a sketch, like there's this inherent quality of it that just it looks good, no matter how like cruddy it is, because then like it never fails. Like I'll do a sketch and then I will put it on the, you know, take a picture of it, I'll vector it, and it looks terrible. And I'm always disappointed. There's always this like sense of disappointment when I first vector it. It used to weigh on me a lot more. Now I just know it's part of the process, and that it takes more time than just, you can't just go around with a pen tool once and it's going to be perfect. That it takes a lot more work. But like there is this like sense of disappointment every time I first vector something. But like I said, it's an incredible tool. I may not be the best person to ask for that because I'm not, I don't use it. But I have lots of friends that do incredible work on it, illustrate stuff like that. But I do think you might be missing out on something if you don't just put pencil to paper. So
for sure. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So, Rain, I don't know if I'm pronouncing your name right. Go ahead.
Yeah, you have it right, Professor Moon. So Bob, quick question. So what I noticed is on the sketchbook that you showed recently, it's the dotted grid books. Have you been always using that, or you transitioned to it?
I love the dot grid. In fact, and it was just like, I don't know what it was. The original sketchbooks that I had were all dot grid. So I still have like, these are all the like the original sketchbooks that I used. So I became a good fan of that because I think it's like enough. And some of it is like, it comes from my like architecture background, where everything was like a grid. And I feel like the grid or the lines were like too structured. And I feel like the dot grid is like, it's not as scary as a plain piece of paper. Because, and being honest, when you're starting something, sometimes like starting is the hardest part. And a blank piece of paper can be a little scary. So I've always preferred the dot grids. Yeah, it's just a personal preference. So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, Matthew.
I have a question, just regarding, because I know you also have a branding background a little bit. You showed in one of your slides that you had 6 different designs for the same name. Do you think that would get a little confusing with your client base if someone saw 6 different types of design elements, even though it's the same? But
are you talking about for the inch by inch stuff? Yeah. So we have like a main logo that we use for the brand, and it's the logo that we started with. But over time, because we make products, we've had to like differentiate, and you see this a lot with brands, and it's something I get hired a lot. I say a lot. I get hired to do like create kind of brand packages for companies that exist, so they can use them specifically on like apparel or hats and stickers, swag, really anything. And the goal is that it still feels like it belongs to the same family. It still feels part of the brand, but it's not just using the same logo over and over again, because eventually your customer base isn't going to want to buy the same shirt in a different color, maybe with the same design on it. So those logos have been made over time. And in fact, now in all honesty, there's probably more like a dozen.
Prove successful in that aspect.
Yeah, I mean, and in fact, that's where, as inch by inch, we've transitioned away from like this is inch by inch sweatshirt I'm wearing. We've transitioned away from the membership side of the buttons altogether. Now Drew lives in Tennessee, and I still live here. So logistically, it's like harder to fulfill because we do all the fulfillment ourselves. And we're focusing more on the actual brand side of it, because over the years since we started that, over the 7 years we've been doing it, people have been really receptive to any of the brand stuff that we've designed, and it sells well. So we're going to be like the future of inch by inch is to lean into more of that. We'll still do buttons because that's the heart and soul of what we started, and we love 1 inch buttons. But yeah, we're going to be landing like the Hellcats. If you're familiar with like Britt and Clark, or they do a great job with their brand, and like they've just taken it to a whole nother level. Like I remember when that started, and it's been awesome to see them grow it. So that's kind of like our goal. So that was something, like I said, that's something that we did over time. To answer your question, we didn't start off with 6 logos. I was being a little bit facetious when I said that during the talk. We do have like the main logo, and then everything else is just developed after that.
The sub designs of it. But thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the question. Thanks.
While others are waiting for another question, you said something towards the end about effort and attitude. Can you expand on that a little bit? I mean, this is something that as an educator we talk quite a bit, with each other about our students. Can you share how the students could take away from that and apply that to their design and whatever they're trying to do?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I don't really feel 40 years old. I feel like a teenager, and you can ask my wife. She always jokes that we have 3 kids, and I'm like the most unruly. But like at the time when I was making the transition to work for myself, I was going through a lot of life reflection, and just kind of this like, is this what I want to do? Is this the right thing? This is stupid. You shouldn't do that. But like one of the things that I've I think in my career, and I think I've seen in some of the younger generation, and this isn't like calling you out or point fingers, but there seems to be this sense of people like wanting everything given to them. And I think like I earned and worked for everything to get to the point where I'm at. And my dad did that and my mom did that. And like I was raised like watching that. So at some point I just kind of realized, and it's something I like have lived by, was like, and I tell my kids, is that like you can't worry about all the things that are going on in your life that you can't control, because the only things we can control, and like maybe there's a couple more, but for me in my experience it's effort. So how much effort I put into something, and my attitude, like how I react, respond to a situation, to another person. I kind of choose to try and have a positive attitude and a positive outlook on life, because I think I'm an extrovert, and I think personally it makes me feel better, instead of being negative all the time. It doesn't mean that I'm always happy or always positive, but I also think like it's better for my friends and family too if I'm positive. No one wants to be around someone who's constantly negative or complaining. So yeah, I honestly believe that like those are two things you control, and two very important things to control, and they will affect the outcome of your life and your experience in life, if you just control your effort, how much time and effort you put into something, and your attitude. So
well said. No, thank you. Thanks for sharing that. Because Nick and and this guy, we talk about this all the time. For design. And having the right attitude and making that effort goes so a long way. And not only builds skill set, but it just really, allows you mentally how you approach things that way. So thank you. So we're almost at an hour, but does anybody else have some questions? Because I had a bunch of questions too, but anybody else?
Whatever we got. If we got more questions, I'm happy to stick around and answer those.
I was actually wondering, do you have like a specific process when you're working with your branding clients, just to help define their own sort of internal voice within your company, and also how they show themselves to their customers, basically?
Yeah, a lot of times I'm working with clients who have established that for themselves, or I'll help guide them to kind of simplify it. The clients all know their customers and their voice. They may not know how to like verbalize that. So sometimes it's a little bit more of a process. I do have, like I said, I work for myself and by myself really. I don't have any like goals of hiring anyone, because I think that's why I like being a designer, is I don't have to and not an art director, because I don't want to manage other people. But that doesn't mean like I work with copywriters and people that do stuff much better than I do. I kind of know my lane and what I'm good at. So that's like the discovery process of any branding project, is we always start with brand voice, mission, who your audience is, all the kind of like key characteristics that kind of will help, like those verbal words will, help visually define the brand. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much.
Peter, I think you're muted.
There we go.
Yeah.
How's that?
Yeah.
Good.
Hey, Peter.
Yeah, I was actually surprised at what you just said about working with copywriters, because I'm really impressed at your how you find words. Like you went through that whole year of thinking, what word am I going to write next, and your slogans and little things you write. I think you're gifted as a copywriter, and I'm really amazing. I'm always struggling to find words when I want to do a piece that's just for myself, just to keep going, in between things. And I have trouble trying to figure out what to say.
I did, as far as the daily lettering thing went, it got to the point where I realized I was spending too much time trying to come up with a phrase or something, the perfect word or phrase.
You can get obsessed.
So yeah, you can, and I did. So it got to the point where I kept a list of phrases and words as they would come to me, and then I would just go and I'd pick one. I'll be like, okay, I don't have a lot of time or energy tonight, so like I'm gonna do the word wow because that's short. And sometimes it was
and
as easy
those
as
kind
that.
of things sort of just come to you. It's not like you can't like sit down.
Yeah.
They're gonna write
Yeah, and I think, I mean, that's a
list. Yeah,
that's a perfect metaphor for like the creative process in general. Is that like sometimes when I sit down to work, I'm not like not in the mood to work, but like I'm not like in the space to work. So at this point, like I like before I would have to be at my desk from 9 to 5. Like the agencies I worked for were like wanted us there during the day. But now it's like I'll just go play golf or go for a walk, or ride my bike or something, and like go outside and do something else, because the last thing I want to do is just sit here in front of my computer and not be working.
you gotta stay active.
But so to answer some of the words that you saw in the branding, like I do work coming from the agency world, and working with copywriters a lot. Like I know the value of someone that can craft, that's a wordsmith and that can craft words, especially for slogans